Thanks, Carl. Oh, no, I forgot my phone. Somebody time me. Just give me a timer. Just don't want to go too long. Okay, so I'm the oddball here. I used to work at BioTeam, and then recently I joined this startup that I'm not supposed to be talking about, so we're still in stealth. Okay, AI, ML. This is the state of the art in AI and ML right now. I kid you not. DanceNet came out in 2002, Lee et al. About 2008. 2008 is around the time where CUDA comes out, GPUs are programmable, ML takes off, and this is where we are right now. We can jam on the computer, 3D modeling, dancing. This is how long it's taken us to get here. It is not ready for most of us. So let's talk about what is also state of the art. So if you have a Roomba, you know that if you had dogs, like I have 3 dogs, a Roomba could be a dangerous thing if one of these dogs happened to poop where the Roomba was running. State-of-the-art AI has figured out that it can see poop and it'll avoid poop. State-of-the-art. So this is the dream. I can now feel safe buying a Roomba, but the reality is the Roomba still has trouble with a rug because the lines that are black on the rug, it makes it think that it's going off a cliff, and the Roomba gets stuck in the rug. This is the state-of-the-art of AI. So if any of you are under any impression that somehow you're going to say, I have all of this data and I'm going to implement AI in my organization and we're going to cure cancer, you are absolutely dead wrong. This is state-of-the-art in AI right now. This is the best we can do. It is not to give you a sense that it's not going to get any better. That is not what I'm here to say. But I'm here to reframe where you can put AI in your organization and how you can use it. So if there's any time that AI could prove its usefulness, it's now, right? We saw COVID. We thought, this is it. COVID is it. We can figure this out. We can diagnose people. We can find those walking asymptomatic people. And people got excited. MIT Technology Review said, doctors are using AI to triage COVID. We were all excited about it. Again, the dream. But spoiler alert. The reality is that hundreds of tools were built, and none of them work. So this is the sobering fact in August 2021, right? So Winans said that they really had their hopes up. Hundreds of predictive tools were developed. None of them made a real difference, and some of them were actually potentially harmful. The Turing Institute said that AI tools had made little, if any, impact in fighting against COVID. 232 algorithms for diagnosing patients were, or predicting how sick they would get, and none of them were fit for clinical use. We tried really hard. There's another place where they looked at 415 published tools, concluded a number of them were fit for clinical use. So this was the time that we had to be experimental. We didn't know what was happening. We had data. It was coming off troves and troves and troves of X-ray data. We were sharing. It was like the most beautiful world in the beginning of COVID where scientists were sharing data and it was sloshing all over the world, and we still couldn't get it in the most basic way to say this person is going to be more sick, triage this person to give them the oxygen that they need, give them the therapeutics that they need. We couldn't do it. This is the state of AI now. So if you're under any impression that in 2 years you're going to hire some intelligent kids coming off of some highfalutin university and you say, I've got data, there's databases and petabytes of data that Dag talked about, go in there and find some project and we're going to sell it and we're going to make money off of AI. That's not where we're at right now. So the reality check is AI is primarily a research tool. And that's where I think most of us need to reframe where AI is really going to be useful in our organizations. Internally, it's going to be useful in our organizations, and I'll show you how. Because your organization is like any other organization that I dealt with at BioTeam. They're likely swimming in data. When I was at NVIDIA, I spent 2 years talking to customers, and customers wanted to do AI, and I went to one big one that's an EHR, and I said, you've got data? Oh, we've got data. We've got tons of data. We're an EHR. We see patients. We have millions of patients in our database. Oh, great. How many databases do you have? Well, I don't know. It's probably about 30 or 50. They're not connected, right? All of them are completely disconnected. There's nothing I can do to search it. Patients come and go. I have no continuity in my data. None of it is usable today. And the person that understood any of it left. Does that sound familiar? How many, does that sound familiar? Let's do group exercise, yes, right? The person that understood any of it left. And the marketing department, as we talked about, has probably already published a piece saying we're using AI on something. But can we call it AI? It's probably some sort of math equation, and they're calling it AI. So on data, so just because, speaking of FAIR, just because you can search it doesn't mean you'll find it, and just because you can find it doesn't mean it's useful. And I said this in a workshop earlier, so I'm quoting myself because I'm narcissistic that way. But that's hard. FAIR is hard, and making it findable is hard. And as you get closer to, like Carl said, as you get to the end of those letters in FAIR, it's even harder. So just making data connect, just making databases connect in the most basic way is a huge chunk of BioTeam's revenue. Just making data connect. Can we connect point A to point B and put it in a place where things can now be built on top of that? So I'll tell you what companies are doing right. The companies that are doing good work and AI are hiring data curators. That's the latest and greatest. We actually came across quite a few. I recommend highly hiring people that know data. Hire people like me. I'm a failed physicist. I'm a failed scientist. I love science. I hate actually doing deep science. I love technology. I love computing. I love dabbling in all sorts of things. Find those like me that are kind of tired of academia, but they love the science, they love it, being part of it, and they understand your data. I'm a computational chemist. I understand data. I understand what it looks like. I understand what protein, PDB files look like. I understand your data. And I'm also a nerd at computing. Find people like me that are tired of academia, hire them as data curators. They'll have a blast. They're people that are in charge of finding data for other people and putting it together. And hopefully you have, within IT and infrastructure, the biggest issue that data curators had was they didn't have a place to put it. So in one organization, one project that I was involved with, I said, how are you sharing data with the scientists when they're asking you to find a particular data set? And they said, well, I'm actually just going to the Slack and Teams, and I'm putting it there, and I'm sending it to them via there, because I had no place to put it. That's the job of IT. That's hard, right? The person found it, couldn't make it useful, right? It couldn't make it usable by somebody else, just a single person. They're hiring ethicists. Do not begin doing AI, especially if you're in healthcare, without an ethicist by your side. Just don't. It's just asking for trouble in the future. If you're going to start gathering data, and if you're going to start using it, if you're going to start reusing data, you need to have a data ethicist by your side. Bake in ways to tag data already into existing processes. If it's coming off an instrument, you can tag data, great. Just start there. It's an easy thing to do. I know these instruments are running Windows 2000. I've seen them. But it's an easy thing to do for you to get something that spills into a file system, already becomes tagged, it's coming out of that instrument, goes elsewhere. Data commons and data lakes, we already talked about that. Starting fresh with new data. If you want to do AI, pick a project where data is going to be created. This historic database of 59 databases that don't interconnect, really hard. Don't. But if you have a new instrument that you've just ordered or a project that's coming up and that instrument is going to be used on some large project, that's a great opportunity to insert some AI folks that you might have hired, or maybe a consultant you might have hired, to work on the data and say, can we do something here? Target AI to improve an internal process. So make the lives of your scientists easier. Do not think that AI is going to be something that you're going to somehow push through FDA approval. That's hard. I think the first one we had was like 2 years ago, and I'm not sure there's been any other AI model that's actually been approved through the FDA. I haven't kept up with it in the last year, admittedly. But that's really hard. But you can do it internally. If you're trying to save, a scientist some facet of time, the easiest one is drug discovery, right? If you're going to look for a set of drugs that you can push through to do the next set of tests and deeper tests, or maybe change the assays, do it there. That speeds up time. Those processes will save you money. Find ways to share or buy data. Now, buy data is easy. There are lots of people generating data today. In fact, a lot of startups are actually the ones that are doing the generating of data. Sharing is scary, but don't worry about thinking about sharing. So as you build these processes, as you build these data lakes, there are a lot of work right now on making encrypted data trainable in AI systems. Federating data, federating training, where you share only the weights but not the data itself. You do not have enough data to do your own work, period. Internalize it, accept it, and we can all move on from here. Nobody has enough data. And I'll give you an example of why. When I was at NVIDIA, and just as the beginning of self-driving cars, we all thought that, well, we have all these YouTube videos. We can just use YouTube videos to train self-driving cars, and we'll figure it out. NVIDIA went out of their way to create an entire hologram world that would generate driving scenarios just so they can use the driving scenarios to train their models. And they're still working at it. You think we have enough data on driving. We have cameras everywhere. We have semi-trucks with cameras on them. You think you'd have enough data. No. You don't have enough data. Accept it now. Accept that in the future, leveraging other people's data, and the secret sauce being your processes, not your data, is going to be the way that you're going to leverage AI. Reuse mature algorithms from Google and Facebook. Many projects that I was involved with, there was a scientist that, they had that forward thinking, they wanted to do AI, they were really good with their data, they had taken some courses, they had done some Coursera. But they were reinventing the wheel, creating their own, nets and deep learning neural networks. Why? Reuse ImageNet. Reuse anything that Google and Facebook has put out. Chances are there's some sort of project that you can turn into an image that the same algorithm that can tell the difference between a Chihuahua and a chocolate chip cookie will work on some MRI image that you have. Just reuse it. My old colleagues at NVIDIA built fantastic models. They have a ton of them. They're giving it away. Reuse it. Do not reinvent. If you have a scientist internally going, I'm trying to build a neural network model, say stop. What already exists out there? Because this is not a research exercise. Something's already been done. That's a PhD for somebody else. You're in production. You're not here to do research projects, right? Reuse somebody else's work. Also, often when I talk to people about what do you want to do with AI, they have very broad ideas. So if you weren't part of the workshop earlier in the week, with Anna and I, we did this exercise with folks where we said, okay, what would you like to use AI for? Exercise number one is they wrote down their questions. And all the questions were very broad, like, I like to solve cancer. That's great. So would everybody else. But we had to get them to work in narrowing the problem, the location, type. Is this person, to the point at which we say, is this person going to have a prognosis that's negative or positive in 3 months? That's the actual level of questioning you have to have for AI. It is not it's not a giant black box where you fill it with bucket and stuff and you put data in there and things come out and answers come out. That's not how it works. Just like before, ask your statisticians, the kind of level of questions you have to do for basic regression is the same kind of level of questions you have to do for AI. And for the stuff that has to do with deep learning, the only scenario where you have to dip into deep learning, 90% of the time you're going to use ML, just straight up regression. When you want to dip into deep learning, the only time you're really going to use deep learning is for those things that you just cannot model, processes that are just way too complex to model. For example, self-driving cars. How am I going to model not running over grandma on a bicycle? I cannot programmatically put that into my computer. I have to have something trained on it. And then hire consultants. Not because I was a bio team, but because you're going to get a much broader view of consultants. When I was working at bio team, I had 4 or 5 projects that I was dipping into. That experience that you're bringing in is going to be far better than somebody that's probably just come out of college with an AI degree. So just because I had that experience from other places, I could reuse that knowledge and apply it to other places. So hire a consultant. What companies are doing wrong? They're buying AI startups. This is controversial, but I'm going to say that this is a wrong approach right now. NVIDIA's Inception program, which is the AI startup program, has, as of August, 8,500 AI startups. Most of them are working off public data. They have the access to data that anybody else has. They're not going to do something extremely novel without better data, and there's not a lot of public data sets out there. So unless there are AI startups that are generating their own data in some way and then doing the modeling themselves, chances are they're not going to be any different than anybody else. They have great ideas, but no access to data. Without the data, you can't really do much. Ignoring ethics and bias in your data. That's a red flag. So if that conversation does not come up in anything that you're doing, I am running out of time already. If that conversation does come up in anything that you're doing, it's a red flag. Adding complexity to processes, a lot of it was trying to get scientists to step away from the process they were already working on and then have them tag data in some other complicated way. Stop. Try to build it into the processes that they have. Proprietary data lakes was a big one. That made me nervous. I just happen to be an open source geek, but if you can find ways that you can work within open source, you'll be better off than staying within a vendor proprietary ecosystem. So if there's a vendor out there promising to tag your data for you, you'll be stuck with that vendor for a very long time, and transferring out of that vendor will be a problem. Stop targeting AI for customer-facing apps. We're not there yet. Believing that your data is enough, like I said, it's not enough. Building your own AI models, don't do that. Trying to solve broad problems, focus, 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 narrow. Talk to your statisticians. You already have them in your organizations. Your mathematicians and statisticians, they're already there. Ask them how to properly formulate a problem. And then ignoring AI altogether. The folks that are in the wait-and-see scenario, that's not the approach either. I know I just said the AI is not ready, but dabbling in AI right now is going to improve the way that you organize your data for when it becomes ready. So most of the work that you should be doing is realizing just because you're trying to do AI, how hard it is to get that data, and then it's going to help you realize what you have to do for your infrastructure for collaborating in data, doing fair practices, et cetera, within your organization. That exercise alone is going to improve and make your organization more robust. So if you give a mouse AI, it's going to want more data, and more data will need better data infra, and better infra will need long-term thinking. So make 2022 the year building good infrastructure for your data. And this is how you learn to stop worrying and love AI. You start with a fresh project. This is sort of the very basic. Generate new data. So start with something that you're generating. Keep a problem narrow. Use it to improve an internal process, and then reuse models that already exist. This is the recipe for success. Folks that are doing AI successfully are doing this. It's a long road ahead. I just like this picture. It was Dag's picture. I just put it there. And fall starts today. So welcome to fall, everybody. And that's it. That's my talk.